It was supposed to be a sweet tradition. For over a century, millions of girls across America put on their uniforms, set up their cookie stands, and knocked on doors with one simple mission: to sell a box of happiness. Thin Mints, Samoas, Tagalongs, cookies that build childhood memories.
But what if those childhood memories are tainted?
What if the very thing marketed as a symbol of empowerment was actually a silent threat to the people buying and the girls selling? In December 2024, a group of researchers set out to answer a simple question: what's really inside Girl Scout cookies? The results? It's scary AF. Every single cookie tested positive for glyphosate, the same chemical found in Roundup weed killer. The same chemical linked to cancer, infertility, gut disorders, and even autism. For decades, parents trusted these cookies. They bought them from bright-eyed little girls on street corners, at grocery stores, at work. They were told it was safe, harmless, just a snack. But if this is what they found in just a few samples, what else have we been eating? The story of Girl Scout cookies isn't what you think. It never was. But to understand that, we need to go back to 1912. Just like what's inside a box of Girl Scout cookies, sometimes the things we carry every day are hiding problems we don't even think about. And if there's one thing you carry every day that's long overdue for an upgrade, it's your wallet. Traditional wallets suck. They're bulky, disorganized. Plus, with so many people stealing these days, your credit card info isn't as safe as you think. That's why I switched to Exter, a smart, slim wallet that makes life easier. With Exter, you stop fumbling for your cards, you just press a button and then they pop up instantly. And the best part, it's ridiculously slim. No more awkward pocket bulge, no more brick-sized wallet making you sit lopsided. This thing is built to last. Premium leather, aluminum, carbon fiber. It actually looks good. And if you're like me and lose my wallet half the time, Exter has an optional solar-powered tracker that lets you find your wallet from your phone. Right now, Exter is running a 30% off sale, and you can try it risk-free for 100 days. Ditch that old, bulky wallet and upgrade to the future of wallets today. Now, back to our regularly scheduled program. In 1912, before women even had the right to vote, Juliette Gordon Low started something that would change the lives of young girls forever. It began in Savannah, Georgia, with just 18 girls, an organization built on empowerment, leadership, and independence. The Girl Scouts were born. And like any movement, they needed money to survive. But this was the early 1900s. There was no internet, no GoFundMe, no corporate sponsors. So in 1917, one troop in Muskogee, Oklahoma, came up with a simple but brilliant idea: baking and selling cookies to fund their activities. At first, these were just homemade treats, sold door to door and at local bake sales.
Cookies for sale!
But as more and more troops caught on, the demand exploded. By the 1930s, Girl Scout councils across the country formalized the tradition. And by 1936, the cookies were no longer baked at home. They were mass-produced by commercial bakeries to meet demand. What started as a grassroots fundraiser became something much, much bigger.
I'm talking about this.
By the 1990s, cookie sales were no longer just a way to support local troops. They became a competition. The Girl Scouts introduced awards, badges, and national recognition for top sellers. Suddenly, this wasn't just about learning leadership skills.
This is about winning.
With badges like Cookie Count, Smart Cookie, and Cookie Biz, the pressure was on. Girls were no longer just scouts, they were saleswomen.
Would you like to buy some Girl Scout cookies?
And while the mission stayed the same, entrepreneurial education, teamwork, and goal setting, something was shifting beneath the surface. The cookie empire was growing. And with millions of dollars at stake, something else falls right behind it: greed.
It's called greed, olds. Their greed will be their downfall.
It didn't happen overnight. At first, Girl Scout cookies were just a simple fundraiser, a way for local troops to raise money for camping trips, uniforms, and leadership programs.
We sell the cookies. Doing the check and with the card, it was fun because I learned it for the first time.
But as sales grew, something shifted. This wasn't just about teaching young girls entrepreneurship anymore.
This is business!
Every year, more than 200 million boxes of Girl Scout cookies are sold across the country. That's almost one box for every American adult. At $5 to $7 per box, I'm not a mathematician, but $5 times 200 million equals hella money.
This is basic math, but basic math is too easy for you.
More than Oreo makes in the US. Think like billions. And here's the craziest part. It all happens in just 3 months. Most businesses struggle to make a fraction of that in an entire year. But the Girl Scouts, they mastered the art of scarcity. They made cookies feel exclusive, limited time only. Once the season ended, you couldn't get them anywhere, unless you're willing to pay scalpers double or triple the price on eBay.
$100,001.
And with that perfect storm of nostalgia, urgency, and marketing, Girl Scout cookies turned into something way bigger than a simple fundraiser. They were a brand, a cultural event, a marketing machine. But when you build something this big, the money doesn't just sit still. It moves, it grows.
Penny stocks, where we make the money.
And when billions are at stake, things start to get ugly. At this point, Girl Scout cookies weren't just cookies. They were a phenomenon. Millions of Americans waited all year for cookie season, scrambling to get their hands on Adventurefuls, Do-si-dos, trefoils. Lines wrapped around grocery stores. Workplaces turned into makeshift sales hubs. And parents, let's be honest, ended up selling half the boxes themselves. The numbers were huge. The Girl Scouts weren't just selling cookies. They were running an $800 million a year empire. With over 1.7 million girl members and 700,000 volunteers, the organization was at its peak, bigger than ever before. And this wasn't a slow grind to the top. This was an explosion of success.
Welcome to our show. Today we're making the famous and delicious Thin Mints cookies. First we mix the dough. Gotta be just right. Place them in the oven. We can even watch them bake.
In 2020 alone, Girl Scouts of the USA reported $112 million in total revenue. That's not just from cookies. Membership fees, investments, and corporate deals pumped millions more into their system. From a simple bake sale to a billion-dollar operation. This was everything they had dreamed of. But when there's this much money at stake, something happens. People start cutting corners. People start looking the other way. And that greed poisons everything.
You are touched with the greed of money.
For over a century, Girl Scout cookies were more than just a snack. They were a tradition, a symbol of childhood, a way for young girls to learn leadership and responsibility. But in December 2024, reality hit like a sledgehammer. A new investigation tested 25 samples of Girl Scout cookies across 3 states. The results?
You're not gonna like it.
100% of the cookies tested contained toxic metals. 96% tested positive for lead. 76% contained cadmium at levels exceeding EPA limits for water. The peanut butter patties had the highest contamination, 42.5 parts per billions of lead. That's the same brain-damaging heavy metal that poisoned thousands of children in Flint, Michigan. The Thin Mints, they had the highest levels of glyphosate. That's the active ingredient Roundup weed killer. And when you add it all up, arsenic, mercury, aluminum, cadmium, lead, one thing becomes clear. These weren't just cookies. They were poison in a box. Parents, teachers, and former Girl Scouts were horrified.
How did this happen?
How did a wholesome tradition turn into something this dangerous? The Girl Scouts denied everything. Their official statement assured parents that their cookies were quote-unquote safe. They pointed to FDA guidelines and insisted their bakers followed strict food safety regulations.
None of those drugs have been approved by the FDA.
But do we really trust the FDA? This is the same agency that ignored toxic metals in baby food for years. The same agency that's been caught failing to regulate food safety time and time again. And while the Girl Scouts were busy protecting their brand, another dark truth was bubbling to the surface. Because the cookies weren't just contaminated with toxic ingredients, they were also connected to child labor.
What do you know about child labor?
For years, Girl Scouts had proudly claimed their cookies were made with sustainable palm oil. But in 2020, an 11-year-old Girl Scout named Olivia Chaffin discovered the truth. The palm oil in Girl Scout cookies wasn't just destroying rainforests. It was being harvested by children her age. She found reports of young girls working on palm oil plantations in Malaysia, some as young as 10, forced to harvest fruit in brutal conditions. And this wasn't some rare, isolated case. The US Customs and Border Protection literally blocked shipments of palm oil from one of Girl Scout suppliers after uncovering forced child labor, sexual violence, and human rights abuses.
18 films may contain explicit language.
nudity, and strong scenes of high-impact sexual violence.
And yet, despite all of this, Girl Scout cookies still contain palm oil today. The organization built on empowering girls had been profiting off the exploitation of girls halfway across the world.
I'll buy a cup if you buy a box of my delicious Girl Scout cookies.
But if you think that's where the greed stopped, you're mistaken, because even after selling millions of boxes, even after bringing in over $800 million a year, the Girl Scouts themselves, the ones actually doing the work, barely saw a dime. The real money, it flowed up the chain. Councils buy the cookies from bakers up front, troop and scouts make the sales, but the cash doesn't stay with them. It moves up to councils, bakers, and the national organization. And what did the girls get? A tiny cut, a cheap stuffed toy or a shiny badge.
Give that back.
And if they don't sell enough, their parents have to pay out of pocket.
Okay, so what is this really about then?
A leadership program, or corporate exploitation disguised as little girls selling cookies. I thought Girl Scouts were just supposed to be hiking or something like that. Instead, they were the free labor force behind a billion-dollar cookie empire.
They're back! It's Girl Scout cookie time! Start the year off right by supporting your local Girl Scouts.
And with 8 delicious varieties to choose from.
There's something for everyone.
So order your cookies today.
The truth about Girl Scout cookies sucks.
But the real problem is,
it's so much bigger than the cookies. These toxic metals, these chemicals, they aren't just in Thin Mints and peanut butter patties. They're in everything. The cereal in your pantry, the bread in your fridge, the snacks in your kid's lunchbox.
And why is that?
Because it's allowed. There's no corporate accountability. The companies with billions in purchasing power, the ones that could demand safer ingredients, don't. Because they don't have to. And honestly, all these companies are probably making all this money at the expense of our health. And we're the ones paying for it. Paying for food that poisons us, paying for healthcare when it makes us sick, paying again when the damage is passed down to the next generation. But it doesn't have to be this way. The solution isn't complicated. It's food that's grown without toxic chemicals. It's farming that doesn't destroy us. It's companies that put people over profit. And maybe, just maybe, it's getting these girls back outside, letting them be kids again, not tiny salespeople and not pawns in a billion-dollar game. Just hiking, camping, laughing, and learning, the way it was always meant to be. All right, see ya. Time to eat.